But cats are second class. They are just not granted citizenship in the animal world the same way dogs are, and they are still the most popular pet. We were killing a lot of animals in animal shelters, and an average of about I think at that point is about 10 million.
Is that per year?
Yeah. Yeah, 8 to 10
Wow.
at that point, I think. And that wasn't even
And,
the
and
high. Being with a cat really defines the word relationship in that you actually have to compromise if you want a successful relationship. If you want to live with cats successfully, you got to meet them in the middle.
Hey, I'm Dr. Doug. I'm a chiropractor for both animals and humans. My life's passion is volunteering at farms and helping rescue animals in need. Join me as we connect with people who have dedicated their lives to helping animals. Together, we'll discover how helping animals live better lives will teach us to be better humans. Welcome to the Animal Cracker Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jackson Galaxy, author, TV host, and a social media sensation with a following of several million supporters. Known for his expertise in feline behavior, Jackson has captured hearts worldwide through his series, My Cat from Hell, and his passion for strengthening the bond between humans and their pets. It's a pleasure to have him here today. Welcome, Jackson.
Hey, good to be here, man.
Thank you. I do have your book, and I think people should really know about your books. You have several books, and I love this one. But there's also Cat Daddy, Catification, and Catify to Satisfy. Was there others besides that, or are those the ones?
That's plenty, man. But writing
Right.
books is that's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
work. I'm working on a new one right now, but yeah, that's it.
Okay. I've written one book. It was a book on the Paleolithic diet. It was called Quantum Paleo. It still sells on Amazon. It didn't sell a lot. At the time, I wanted to have it as a book that I could use when I was lecturing and sell at the back of the room. And so I guess I met my bucket list of writing that. But I do want to talk a lot about your rescue work, but just in case people that are listening in don't know you, I just want to get a little introduction on how you got into the world of cats and maybe just a little bit also of how you wound up being on the Cat from Hell TV show with Animal Planet. How would that journey start? You don't have to go all the way back to first grade, but your adult journey, maybe you do, but your
Well, yeah. No, good
how do
for
you?
us. We don't have to. Yeah. I was one of those, and this is a very common thing, especially in rescue, where people just get yanked into it and you didn't even see it coming. And all of a sudden your life changes. And this is back in around 92 or three. And I was just working as a musician, which meant that I really wasn't working very much and needed jobs. And I had worked every dead end job imaginable. Like, those are some of the worst jobs you can imagine. And then a job opened up at the Humane Society, and I was like, any day of the week, I'll scoop poop. That's cool. I just don't want to like deal with the humans. I didn't really have any experience. I mean, I grew up with a dog, but once I started working there, within a couple of weeks, it was really one of those things where the cats were just like seeking me out. Crew was making fun of me. They're calling me Cat Boy. And we were at that time across the US, and, we were killing a lot of animals in animal shelters, and an average of about, I think at that point is about 10 million.
Is that per year?
Yeah. Yeah. 8 to 10 at that point, I think. And that wasn't even
And,
the
and
high.
and were you in California then, or were you in another
No,
state?
I was living in Boulder, Colorado at that point, and it was just it was pretty out of control. Yeah, but so it was really one of those things where, as I was finding little ways to get cats to respond to something, to anything, to overcoming fear, to showing themselves better, to getting through an aggression issue, whatever it was that was going to keep them alive, I did. And I was on an island, really. I mean, back then, what was workable in terms of cat behavioral work in high pressure situations was very, very little. So whatever worked for me, I did. Whatever worked for me became my work. And as the years went on, I mean, one of the things that I did was I went to my boss and I said, what if I could just go to people's houses before, they call and they say, listen, my cat Bruce pissing on the pool table for, 6 months. Like, I get rid of him. And if I go to
Mm.
your house and try to solve the problem, that cat never comes to me. And that worked really, really well. And that became eventually my job once I left the shelter. But that's how it sort of started.
Wow. And were you working full time at that point or putting it together?
You mean in terms of the shelter or after the
Yeah.
shelter?
The shelter was like a
Oh
part
yeah,
time, you
no, the
grew into
second
full time.
I was in, man. I was like full-time job and then some. I mean, I was there for almost 10 years. I pretty much worked every position in the shelter besides running the place, which job nobody really wants. But I did everything from I led the customer service team. I was the outreach coordinator. I drove the mobile adoption unit, and I was cat boy. So like I did just about everything I could do. I once you realize that, and it was funny. I was just teaching at a shelter yesterday, and I remember saying yesterday that there was that moment where you go, like, for better or for worse,
Mhm.
I'm home. This is home for me. And the only other time in my life I ever said that was the time I picked up a guitar. Between those two things, I was like, that's,
That's
can't argue.
really, it's really good to at least find those two things. And you got, along the way, you got elevated from cat boy to cat daddy. So that's something.
I did that. I did that all by myself. I was
Oh,
like,
you
if
did?
you're going to call me cat anything, let's get this
Right.
right.
Here's a question. I don't know if anyone ever asked you, but when you started that part, that anecdote part of your life, you said that you had a dog at that time, but not a cat. When was your first cat?
I mean, I lived
And
with a cat. Like I remember my first living with cat was a kitten that I had gotten for a girlfriend I was with in college. So I lived with a cat, and then I lived with some more cats, but it wasn't, I mean, I had a cat by the time I started working at the shelter. I just didn't grow up
mm,
with one.
yeah.
So my first cat, Rabbi, had come with me to Colorado. So I got him in about
What,
90.
what was it? What was his name?
It was Rabbi. And the reason why his name was Rabbi is because he just jumped out of it was a kitten, jumped out of a bush, and I was about to leave town. I was leaving grad school. I had to go back to New York, and I gave him to a friend of mine, and her name was Jennifer, and her last name was Moses. So I was like, okay,
Oh,
well,
Rabbi.
you are now Rabbi Moses, and then I wound up having to take him
and
back.
and he also spoke a little Yiddish, so that helped round it out.
If
Yeah.
Yiddish could be spoken with teeth, yeah,
That's great.
which
So,
sometimes it is.
so then going ahead a little bit, you must have got to Los Angeles and you wound up getting the possibility of doing that first TV show. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that too?
I mean, I moved to LA after Colorado. I literally I was like, I've been in the mountains for 15 years. Get me
Mhm.
out of the mountains. I want to go to the water. And I just moved here to Redondo Beach and settled in. And really, it was one of those things where I had no designs on being on TV. I hadn't put two and two together yet. That my two things were I was a performer and a writer and a cat guy. And I hadn't put those things together yet, but welcome to Hollywood. And within a couple of weeks, I think a friend of mine saw me sort of, I walked into like a Petco or something and they were doing adoptions. And I walked right over there and started talking to them about their cats. And he watched that happen and had the idea. We pitched it out. The pitch itself went flat, but then word got around that a guy who looks like me works with cats. And eventually it was just one of those really lucky, like, you meet the right people, and it happened very fast. I mean, if I moved here in, let's say, whatever the year was, let's say it was in a September, by March, I was filming a pilot.
Wow. Didn't you do over 150 or 160 episodes or something?
We did. It's funny because we did 100 episodes, but each episode is actually two homes. So I always count each home as an episode because God knows, man, each one of those things took like 8, 10 weeks to make. So yeah, it was 100 episodes, 200 families, cats from heaven, traveling all over the world. It was great.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about your real passion that never seems to die down for you is your work with rescues. And I know that's something you like to dig in about. Can you take me into that
Yeah,
world?
I mean, I think the one thing that, I may have stopped working at the shelter, but I will always be a shelter guy. That's who I am.
Mhm.
And I tend to forget that sometimes until I go into a shelter like yesterday. And this is my tribe. This is,
Mhm.
for better, for worse. And hopefully someday I won't need a tribe and hopefully they'll all go away. But for right now, I just feel like I still have a lot to offer cats and humans in shelter environments. So I started, at first it was called the Jackson Galaxy Foundation, and we had a number of programs to help at-risk animals and the people who serve them. Then I merged with Greater Good Charities. And when we did that, we renamed it the Jackson Galaxy Project. And we've had a number of really successful programs through the years. We're right now developing, it's called Cat Positive 360, which is what I'm trying to do is reintroduce the cat to sheltering because I think there's still a real lack of understanding of who cats are and what their needs are and how to best care for them, how to even view them and enrich for them and put them in the right homes. And we're workshopping it now in shelters all across the US and in an attempt to make it sort of a plug and play. This is who a cat is and this is what they need. And I know that sounds really basic, but honestly, cats, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way because I have dogs, but
Yeah.
cats are second class. They are just not granted citizenship in the animal world the same way dogs are, and they are still the most popular pet. They're still the most populous animal in homes across the world.
I didn't know that. I would have always guessed that there's more dogs per capita than
Yeah.
cats, but it's
Well, there's
actually
not more
cats,
cats,
right?
period. So, and a lot of homes, like
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of homes have multiple cats too, so it
Yeah.
skews the numbers. But I think there's over 90 million cats in American homes compared to something like 80 million dogs. So,
Wow. Interesting. Going back to what you just said with like cats and in the whole like almost teaching the rescue places or rescue places learning how to facilitate cats in that environment a little bit better. What do you think is happening is because the dog is the primary model, they try to create it like a dog place when it's really should have its own unique vibe to it. Is that
I
what you're
mean,
saying or
partially, but and I think that if we look at the rise of cat cafes all across the world, they have created this cat-centric model that people are just incredibly attracted to. They do adoptions in record numbers. But what I mean also is that there's still a level of, and when I say the word ignorance, it's just a lack of knowledge about cats, and so they get pushed to the side for no other reason than I don't know what to do. So I'm going to give them shelter and I'm going to do the best I can. But the bottom line is, as humans, we understand dogs better because for lack of a better word, we built them. You know, the dog human experience is a coevolution. Like we are connected to them. We know what to do for them. We create programming and enrichment, and we keep them from going kennel crazy. And we have volunteer experiences and puppy kindergarten and walking programs and overnights and whatever. And cats sit around because that story between human and cat is not fabricated by us. Cats are self-domesticated. Our journey together has been more of like through time, more of like co-workers than it was like human and human companion um, until really recently. So it makes sense that we would be behind the eight ball, but I want to get us out.
I mean, I don't know if this hypothetical question or one you've actually tackle from time to time. But let's say you were brought in as a consultant to a cat rescue group that's not been doing it for a while and they don't really know what to do yet. What might you find as some of their misconceptions or their like mistakes, or you would use the word ignorance, but how they might be missing the big picture that you would say clearly what you might see is this because it's a common misstep
I
in
mean, I
in
think,
in the in the world of cat rescue that could be remedied, or it could be a change, just a little change in philosophy or concept, and they really get it and soar.
the thing that I base the entire cat positive approach on is the concept of the raw cat. So the raw cat, the ancestor, the cat that is 100% alive in the cat sitting in your lap, or the feral cat out there. It doesn't matter. They're all the same cat. There's a straight evolutionary line because we haven't selectively bred. We haven't done it for jobs. We haven't done it for until relatively recently for appearance or for levels of domesticity. We've just had cats in our lives. And to that end, we should always be fully aware that the raw cat is alive and that cats are not fully domesticated. And that's important to note because we can't bend cats to our will. The way we not bend dogs to our will, but we don't necessarily have to because, again, there's
Right.
that baseline understanding. And I think once you realize that there's a certain level of, wow, this is a miracle that this animal lives in my home, will poop in a box for the rest of their lives, as opposed to what their nature is telling them to do. We don't want them to scratch. We don't want them to, be. We don't want them to guard resources. We don't want them to be territorial. We don't want them to be cats. Then, if we're not understanding, so my whole thing is get to know history of cat first. So no cat with a capital C. Then you can filter that through the story of the individual and give
Right.
them that level of dignity.
Right.
And yeah,
Right. And a cat is not a dog, and they need to
which is,
be
you would
related
think,
to differently.
right? You would think that
Yeah.
that's sort of a given, but it's truly not. And it's not our fault. We're programmed that way, that when we think of who is an animal companion, it's the one who looks to us and says, "Tell me what to do." And the cat is like, and so we also, speaking of that, the misconception that cats are solitary, that cats are self-sufficient, that cats are aloof, that cats are, fill in the blanks. These judgment calls almost that we put on cats because we're not fluent in cat
Mhm.
enough to say, no, this is what a cat looks like when they actually want you, when they want to be around, and not necessarily like purr, headbutt, whatever. But learning that language is such a service. And if you're working in a shelter, you're working in a rescue, don't forget that that service, which is you learning about them, not only affects the lives of each and every cat that comes through your care, but every time you match them up to a family, you just spread the word. You just laid the foundation for a generation going forward of people who get them, who understand cats, who won't misread
Mhm.
them, who won't take it personally when a cat doesn't want to do what you want them to do, which I wouldn't have a job. If it weren't for projection, I would not have a job. So,
A perfect next question is, because I love this, but Mojo, what I know what it means because I read it, but can you share, because that I think is the next part of the question that I was just talking to you about, of getting to know your cat. I think it's part of the same conversation we're in because it's part of getting to know what a cat really is, and it's not a dog. And cats have certain needs and certain behavioral patterns that just need to be embraced or accepted, or you can coexist with these.
and that's the thing. And what's funny is that I tell this story that at the very beginning of the book that, and I think it's because growing up as a musician and a fan of the blues, that the word mojo was always just part of my vocabulary. Like, that's what it is. And I didn't realize that really, like, the vast majority of people have no idea what that word means. And so I always have to sort of explain it. But mojo in humans, when you talk about having your mojo on, having your mojo working or whatever, it's about that sort of inner flame of confidence that exposes itself. Like, you just walk a little taller, you have a little bit of a strut in your
Yeah.
step. It's not put on, it's not artifice, it's not cockiness. That's mojo.
Yeah.
And part of the whole mojo thing is I know why I'm here. Like, I know that I belong in this. Like, if you ever saw a pitcher walk up to the mound, that's mojo, right? I've
Yeah.
been doing this since I was freaking 6 years old. I know exactly what to do. I go through all my little things. I know the crowds. I can work under pressure, whatever. That's for cats. That mojo is based in the raw cat. I am connected to that thing that reminds me what I'm on the planet to do and what a cat is on the planet to do. Not to make it like you know, so basic that it makes them seem stupid. But don't forget, they were valued by humans because they were beautifully perfect hunters.
Mhm.
And when we engage them in hunting behaviors, connect the hunt, catch, kill, eat, groom, sleep, cycle, and we create that in our home. Every moment of the day, they're like, this is who I am. This is what I
Mhm.
do. I'm confident. So if I'm confident, I own my territory, then all of these sort of behaviors that people will call me in for aren't given oxygen in the first place because those things come from, I mean, obviously there's medical reasons for a lot of things, but it's also just this territorial insecurity. I'm not sure I own the place. so I'm going to over-own it. I'm not sure I own the place. I'm going to hide under the bed. Unleashing cat mojo, whether it's through play, whether it's through nutrition, whether it's through environmental enrichment, letting them explore the vertical world, you'll see differences in your cat like that. Those little pockets of anti-mojo just get like,
And
obliterated.
they blossom then, right? They shift.
They blossom. They blossom. You see a cat in every time you see a cat in their raw sort of splendor. I mean, think about this. Like this was, and you as somebody who
Mm.
works with animals every day, 99% of all species who have ever walked this planet don't walk the planet anymore. Only 1% have made it. And cats are of that 1%. And
Yeah.
the reason is because they are gloriously singular in in their physiology. Like everything from the whiskers to the eyes to their incredible sense of smell to the way hair stands up and can tell temperature and is somebody coming to get me, the way they sleep, the formation of their teeth, everything is to eat meat, to hunt it, to eat it, and to own
Yeah.
territory through that.
I've read that they're in some regards one of the most perfect predator. Like they
Yeah,
really don't have flaws. They check all the boxes.
they do check all the
Yeah.
boxes. Yeah. I mean, even still, the animal that checks all the boxes is probably successful in their hunt, probably less than 50% of the time. But in that way, they're designed for speed and not distance. I mean, think about this. Their prey, they're crepuscular. Their prey is always out, dusk and dawn. We know
Mhm.
that. Their eyes have sacrificed the like clarity of color for the preciseness of shape and being able to see in low light. The ability to gather up all of the available little shards of light and turn that into a spotlight to their prey. It's brilliant. And I'm not saying this is a sadist, man. This is coming as somebody who, as themselves, is an animal activist and a vegan and whatever. And yet I see this beauty of evolution. This animal that has, like I said, a singularity in terms of what it is that makes them tick, and what makes
Yeah.
them tick, that is mojo.
Yeah, and you think about it, like going back to the evolution, like example that you gave, that only walking on the planet today, including humans, is only about 1% of all species that have been on the planet since the origination. But
Yeah,
how many dogs could be surviving today if they weren't domesticated? We look at certain
yeah,
breeds that probably never would survive
never.
if they didn't have humans take care of every need for them.
No,
Because
that's
if
our
we
fault.
if we see the ones that still are raw, they don't look like your little French bulldog, do they?
No, as a matter of fact, I have one. One of my dogs. We rescued him from a really bad situation outside of Tehran, and when we did the DNA test, he's a village dog, and I didn't even know at the time that that's a thing. Like that,
Yeah, I
and
don't know.
apparently 80% of the dogs on this planet are classified as village dogs, which is to say, like cats, they made themselves of use to a certain village or wherever, and they stuck around and they get companionship, food, whatever, and they have no connection to any breed. They have no genetic markers for any disease that is associated with the breeds of these dogs. They're a straight line to the wolf. And I was fascinated by that. Like there was
Yeah,
like a 10-page report. I was like, oh my God, I have a village dog.
yeah,
That's where cat and dog meet. But yeah, no, but to your point, I mean, we have done a lot in the name of pretty dogs. I mean,
yeah.
and made it so it's impossible for them to breed or
Right.
impossible to breathe or, a lot of things that,
Because I see that, I'm a animal chiropractor for a lot of dogs, and we've seen how humans have manipulated species and breeds. I mean, not species, breeds, where we've changed the German Shepherd. We have certain character traits that we want, so we crossbreed all the time. We make the Labradoodle, and and I don't know if that was meant to be, but we want those we want the miniature version of a larger dog. I'm sure we have a miniature wolf out there somewhere. But as you mess with Mother Nature, the ugly head
Nature
of
is back, right?
yeah, it bites you in the butt, right? Mother Nature will bite you in the butt every time mess around with Mother
Yeah,
Nature,
and I
and
mean,
and we've done that more with dogs than other really manipulated.
have you worked? I mean, because that's fascinating to me. I mean, not fascinating. It sounds sadistic, but I mean, what we've done to the German Shepherd in terms of their gait, it
Mhm.
makes it almost impossible for them to get through their lives. Now, someone out there is going to be like, "No, Jackson, you don't have." But I mean, without
Yeah.
sincere hip problems, I mean, we know that bulldogs can't breed without
Mhm.
cesarean sections. The most popular dog in the world, the French bulldog, is a genetic mess. I mean,
Yeah, and then they have the breathing difficulties almost to the point that they can't function because they can't get
yeah.
anything through their face, and that's part of our quest for having them look the way we really want them to look, but at sacrificing potentially their health and their longevity of their breed.
I mean, when
And
you think about it, I mean, that's like more egregious with cats, right? Because
yeah,
at least with dogs, they have a background of being bred to do certain things, to perform certain
right,
jobs. To have with cats, it's just been nothing but looks. We're just trying to get a certain look out of a cat, and so we see these things
right,
that we like, and we then, if you take like so what was sort of a genetic fluke, which would be the hairless cat. All of a sudden, we have a sphinx. Can't regulate their own body temperature, has to wear a sweater half the time, but we still breed them and we want them.
yeah,
There's breeds, the hybrids. I mean, the Savannahs, the Bengals, and the closer they get to that hybrid of wildcat and cat, I'm telling you, man, like I'll I'll come to your house and work with you, but you are absolutely paddling uphill because they're wild, you know.
right. And
Yeah.
you've played with genetics at that point.
Yeah.
Um, I was curious because you talked a little, going back a step, talking about how you could sometimes just work with a family and make a few observational changes for the family, and you'll see the cat blossom, one that is always hiding behind the couch because it doesn't feel its mojo and feel like this is my domain. Do you have any like fun stories of a specific cat that just, you know, warms your heart when you saw the transformation?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, I'm,
like I know it's thousands, but like one that comes to mind or one that you
well, I'll
sometimes
tell you what comes to
use
mind.
as use as an example for perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows? It could have been just because I knew the show was winding up, 10
Mhm.
seasons in. I knew that I was down to like the final three or so episodes. But it was also because it was a friend of mine. One of our cases dropped out while we were working in Philly, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, listen, my friend's got this foster cat. She's on strike two. If she comes back to the shelter, she's gone because she kept getting on bite confinements, and so it was one of those last minute kind of things, which made it a little more important. It was also obviously a shelter cat. So it was this cat whose person had died, she was elderly and she died, and this cat just turned into this lockdown, like I will take your fingers off cat. Wound up in foster in one of those like we think of them as dog cages, the crate training cages, And this woman couldn't get her fingers in that thing. She could not get the cat to engage in any other way than in a violent way. The only other choice she had was to put the food down, leave the room.
Mm.
So, and the good thing, I guess, over all these years is the one thing I can always trust is if my gut is speaking to me about somebody, then I know what to do. And I knew this cat and I knew what that shutdown was from. And I knew that when they're shut down like that, it reflects that I've been robbed of territory. I've been robbed of, like, I don't know how to navigate the world. So I go back to my primal, kill or be killed, cats are right in the middle of the food chain, half prey, half predator. So they get into that place where they feel backed into a corner. I just remember it as clear as yesterday, spending about an hour sprawled on the floor of this room, just talking to the cat and trying different exercises, putting treats between my fingers, putting my hands on the ground, eyes away, just for, whatever it was. And they were used to that kind of crazy stuff. I mean, but it was a long time. And at the end of that, and the foster mom was amazing and was willing to do whatever. And really, what we did was we just got rid of the pen and just got rid of it, and then did certain exercises which were meant to cross challenge lines, which is come one step closer, get this jackpot treat, putting treats on hands but keeping our hands flat because every time we'd raise a hand. And but the beautiful thing is this, like I left the house going, look, as long as she didn't go back to the shelter and get killed tomorrow, then I'm cool, 24 hours later, I get this picture of, I swear to God, it just still gets me, of this picture of the cat sitting in her lap. And the next thing I see, she sends me a video clip of the purring and I mean, so completely out there that it was, I mean, I expect cats to be able to find their way and to make changes, but just like humans, that kind of thing happening overnight is just like nuts. But she was so ready and she was so tired of holding up that guard that, man, it was crazy. It was amazing.
I mean, what a gift for the owner because, she got that connection that she was hoping for, right?
But even
Yeah.
more beautiful, she was a foster parent. That's what's even
Oh,
more beautiful, was that she was able to pass that connection on to a new family.
to the new
And it's
family. Yeah.
just like that. So that bridge from this cat to me to foster mom to a new home, and that cat was happy as hell from the day she got into a new home. It shows the possibilities of what we can do.
Right. And you skipped the euthanasia step because that cat could have, the cat could have gone, eventually gone in that direction if it keeps getting returned.
If any animal in a shelter, and of course every municipality is different, but if they've already been on bite confinement 3 times,
That's
and
it.
we're struggling in this country, which we are mightily for space, then that's a cat that won't get adopted. And so that's what's going to happen. That's the thing. The shelter in Philly is a great place. They've given her every chance, but
I want to share a product that I'm really excited about. And in this case, it's my product. I made this video course recently called How to Massage Your Dog. The website is called howtomassageyourdog.com, and it's still on sale if you check in with it. But it gives you a way to work on your dog from head to toe, whether it's a few minutes a day or outright full body sessions. It's good for that puppy. It's also good for your senior dog. It's a way that you can manage pain and help that dog not suffer as it goes through the different stages of life. I show everything in this video course from hand techniques through full body massage, everything from a teacup dog to a Great Dane. It's all in one video course. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And there's even a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. howtomassageyourdog.com. So I was wondering if you could share a story with us, perhaps, of like we talked about that cat had a healing and of course the family and the progression from the foster to the new permanent family. Does any story that you remember where you really saw the human had a big shift because of this process and maybe it touched their lives so impactfully that they were really had a major breakthrough?
one of the first beautiful things about working with cats and facilitating the bond between humans and cats is that being with a cat really defines the word relationship, in that you actually have to compromise if you want a successful relationship. If you want to live with cats successfully, you got to meet them in the middle. You try to do anything else and it's going to be a failure. So us learning how to compromise and listen to an animal, as opposed, I mean, we have a hard enough time with humans. So that alone is a change. When you have to help your animal companion to be a better version, and you have to show true parenting skills to get them there. And plus, you don't speak the same language. It humbles you to a point where the changes, I can say almost everybody I've ever worked with, and I've worked with tens of thousands of people. But one of the things, when you first said that, I was like, well, they're not necessarily the person's home. But I went to, and we did this for my cat. We went to a prison, a max security prison in South Carolina. And they had this foster program there where the local shelter there was 100% kill rate. So you go into the shelter, you don't come out. So this wonderful woman started this program where she would take dogs and cats out of the shelter, and then had a program where prisoners at this prison became foster parents and dog trainers. And they had specific things they were trying to teach the cats, and then they would get adopted out of there in record numbers. It was amazing. And so when I went to visit, that was so evident. Like, there are guys in this place, and they're sharing bunks. Like, their cells were like, I don't know, man, like 7 by 8, something like that. And you have toilet, little mini fridge thing, window, bed, litter box, And the cats were just walking around with such confidence around this place. They were bragging on them all over the place. But there was this one guy that I met. I was interviewing him, and he said to me, and you got to be a little tough to be okay in a place like that. And he said, I've been locked up since I was 18. He said, I'm going to be here the rest of my life, probably. And he was probably in his 30s, something like that. And he goes, and it wasn't until I met this guy, meaning the cat, it wasn't until I met this guy that I understood what love was. And I was like, like, so all she wrote, man, and every guy. There's some guys who left that program who left jail and became dog trainers, who found that calling. And we see that program actually repeated in a lot of prisons around the U.S. now.
That's beautiful. And I think that's probably all the animal owners and lovers of animals, no matter what type of animal they have. I guess we all do feel that love and that connection, and that's what warms our hearts. But that must have been so cool for that guy that really probably never experienced any type of warmth throughout his life, right?
Yeah, and also that feeling. Yeah, it wasn't. I know what he was trying to say, but
Yeah.
also that, like, guardianship. I am a guardian. I am a parent. I am a steward. I am responsible for the well-being. That is, my story is well written about, and my first book talked all about my history with addiction. But I promise you that if it weren't for that sense of, oh wow, there's something I'm supposed to do, I would have been dead 30 years ago easily. I mean, there were many times, and a lot of addicts share this story, where they feel like they are about to, and they go, well, who's going to take care of my cat? Who's going to take care of my dog? And that's the thing we think about that pulls us back.
And we see so many examples of that, like very often, like a couple that's been together as partners, either whatever type of couple, but 40, 50 years, and one of them dies very soon after, sometimes within 6 months or a year, the second half of that marriage or partnership, the other spouse dies also.
Yeah.
And, but not when there's a pet, with a pet, the other one feels a sense of staying on and connecting. The cat or the dog or whatever, keeps people waking up in the morning and putting their next foot forward.
Which should be something that, whether it is memory care facilities or elder care facilities, a lot of them don't allow their residents to keep their animals with them, even in sort of this private housing. And man, that would go a long way if every place allowed that bond to stand. It is better than any medicine. That whole thing where, like, you touch an animal, you know this, you touch an animal and, like, your blood pressure goes down,
Exactly. And I think you would need less medication, you would need less therapy, and you'd have less loneliness and depression.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, you just moved. I mean, you started working with animals as a chiropractor, like, I mean, actually not that far back, right?
Yeah, just like 3.5, 4 years ago.
Like, those times, because I've seen your stuff before, like, because your connection to them is very much like you have to become one for those moments, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you feel it more than most would, that sense of what it feels like for animal and human to connect in that way.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, and I do a lot of work with rescues where I go to these rescue places. And so let's say I go to a horse rescue farm, and they have a horse there that might have arrived emaciated with wounds on it from being hurt or whipped. And it's underweight and it's scared and it's skittish and it didn't grow up with love and affection. And I'm there not necessarily the day it arrives, but a couple of months later, they've already given it some food and fattened it up a little bit. But the first thing I'm asked to do is find their most painful spot and work on it. And
Yeah.
here's a horse that is skittish and worried and anxious about me approaching. And then within a minute or two, I'm going to have to find its most painful spot and work on that spot. And
Yeah.
something that people make fun of me about, or sometimes they enjoy it, but I always ask for consent out loud. I'll say, "Can I work with you today?" And
Bravo.
I think part of it is two reasons. One is I want to hear people hear that, because I feel both children and animals don't always get consent when we step into their boundaries and just dominate them.
Yeah.
And the other is I feel like it gets me right, like it humbles me, and I go, I'm stepping into their boundary, their bubble, and if I just ask permission, it kind of like checks me into the right position. And then and I get kicked and bitten a lot less than I think most people that do what I do. And I always have people go, I can't believe you don't get kicked all the time, or I can't believe you don't get bitten all the time. And I think part of it is because I get myself right before I move in close, and I ask for permission, even though I think on some level they know what I mean. But if not, I remind myself that I'm there as a guest, that I'm
Yeah.
not coming in to dominate them. And
Yeah.
then
And
yeah,
it's
and it
beautiful.
works.
I love the idea. What is it that you say? What's your consent? What's like the
Yeah.
phrase that you say to a
And
horse?
if you listen, it's on every video, and I've done like over 800, no, well, between Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, I've probably done 800 animal videos where I put my work up. I literally say, "Can I work with you today?"
Ah,
And
yeah.
then I wait for an answer. I wait. Sometimes
Yeah.
they lick my face, sometimes they look away. With cats, a lot of times I blink my eyes and take my
There you
head
go.
down because I don't want to do their, too in their space. But it also just gives me that moment to go, I'm here. I have to humble myself. I have to kneel down to meet them. And I'm grateful that they're letting me in.
I think people who have the experience of having expectations with animals like we do. I think what folks don't understand, for people like us who you invite us into your worlds and your animals world with expectations. You want results from us. And sometimes I think humans will, when they hire someone to be of service, it's almost like, well, go fix. And with energetic beings, whether they're speaking dog and you're speaking English, whether it's that the intent of that phrase, the energy of that phrase, may I, and then waiting for the answer. In my world, it is all the slow blink. It's the cat I love you. It's that the showing you the vulnerability. I know in this moment, if you wanted to, you could just kick my ass, but I trust that you won't. Now are we friends? Now can we do this? It's a pretty special feeling. It's an honor.
It's really cool. In closing, I always like to ask people, but you've already shared it so much because you said you might not even be living today if you didn't, you know, you had to deal with a lot of personal pain, um, and then your work with animals. Not to be morbid, but let's say you and I aren't going to be on this planet forever. What would you like people to have learned from the journey you've been on? Like what would you want to pass down to people that go, look, freaking just see this, get this, and you'll be okay.
Outside of the hoping that they are by and large treated with more dignity and more rights, I would love it for people to see that the animal human relationship is 100% give and take, that we get from them what we give, and the other way around too, that it's something where there's the whole notion of dominion, that it's just sort of this sort of built-in notion that humans have, that we're at the top of the food chain, and as such, everybody else is below us. We have a lot to learn from animals, and it
Mm-hmm.
is good for us to learn those things. And it is life-changing and soul-changing to put yourself in the position of being a student of non-human animals. And
Mm-hmm.
if anything that this life has taught me is that if I ever feel at sea, which I do a lot, when the only time I feel right is when I feel at one with an animal, and I don't think that has to be particular to an animal person. And to that end, I would say this. I mean, if you want, because again, you would think I'd come here and talk about cats only, but if you do a service for the animals in your community, whatever animal that is, whether that's like just showing up to a shelter with donations, whether that's helping with local efforts to do TNR and to do high volume spay and neuter, or to help vaccinate, or just to donate, or just to go into a place and hang out with these guys and give them a way to get through their days. You come away with that not just saying, I've done a mitzvah. It's not just that. It's okay. I feel more whole than I did before,
Yeah.
and that's the challenge I would put out there. And hopefully, if anything, more than just he was the cat guy who taught about cats, which I'm not, looking down on at all. It's that I passed on something of value when it came to elevating animals. Period.
Yeah. See, that's great. I mean, I hope to share some of that after my days are done too.
Yeah.
What you said about the humans being like such a superior species in certain categories, but I find that animals are so superior to us, and like, I don't know, getting the be in the moment, and like unconditional love, and they listen better than we do, and
Yeah.
they communicate more purely than we do. We always wear masks. I'm going to be this person right now. I'm going to present to everybody in my life this side of my personality. But they don't do that crap. They just give it to us real, raw, every moment. And that's the lesson. I mean, I don't know anyone else I can learn that from at that level. So
Exactly. You know what?
they're sages. They're wisdom filled prophets.
And it's so funny that you say that. Two things. One is that I always say this: you've never heard an animal make an excuse. You've never heard an animal go, yeah, but I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
First of all, I got to have dinner. Second of all, if I say this to this person, then I
Yeah.
got this
Or
problem.
they get hit by a car, and they have to have their leg removed,
Yeah,
and they just live a happy life with three legs.
but that's the thing. I'm in
You show
pain.
me a human that's not, totally destroyed from that, you
That's
know?
it's funny how like somebody will say, "Well, I have a special needs cat. I have a deaf cat." Okay, I get that you have a deaf cat, but you realize that your cat doesn't know he's deaf. He knows he knows he's at a uh, perhaps at in a handicap when it comes to prey and predator.
Yeah.
But in terms of the stigmas that go along with being deaf, or the judgment, or the whatever that is, they got no mirror going. There's no social
Yeah.
mirror of judgment or whatever. They live a much more pure life. And it's funny
Yeah.
because my wife and I were talking about this the other day when we were talking about the concept of reincarnation. We were talking about coming back. And what would you come back as? When you get to the point where you go, hold on a second, I think that animals are just one revolution ahead of us. Like
Yeah.
once you get to that point where you can communicate non-verbally, where you can do so in such specificity. I mean, look at the lives of elephants. Look at how they communicate. It's crazy. It's crazy how advanced they are in so many
Yeah.
ways.
And
Um,
so good at so many things, but so are they. They're
yeah,
experts at what they do. And we could learn from them, and it touches my life. I mean, I had a lot of trouble as a kid with, some physical abuse, and a lot of pain. And I find when I'm with animals, it kind of soothes my soul. It puts the salve on those painful spots I can't reach.
yeah.
And so there's such a gift for me. How can people stay in touch with you? Like, to me, you're very easy to find because you just type in Jackson Galaxy and you'll find your website. You find your books on Amazon, or you also sell your books on your own website. But and you also have Instagram. So we're going to put some of those up on the video version of this, but also an audio version. It's going to be in the description box. But is there any other way that I miss that people need to, get to know you a little bit better?
I mean, that I think my main audience at this point, not to devalue any of the other ones, but I think our YouTube community is the most vital at this point, and It's funny. Right now, I'm sharing something I thought I would never do, by the way, which is I'm doing this vlog series because one of my cats is in hospice right now, and I just wanted to sort of share.
Yeah, I've been following that.
It's a, I mean, that
Yeah.
was a dare. That was like
Yeah.
am I really going to do something that's that, But that makes me feel connected,
Yeah.
community wise. It's that straight line, and everyone understands grief. And
Yeah.
yeah, YouTube is a really great place to find me.
Your recent Instagram post about that just had me crying. It's
Yeah.
it's
The
it's a
thing
tough
about
time.
it is,
Yeah.
it's also a time to cut through the nonsense. Like you can sit there and your human brain will do anything not to sit with the fact that you are powerless. And at this moment in time with my Caroline, I'm powerless. I'm powerless to do anything but to be a part of.
Right.
And, and boy, though, I mean, you know how that feels. We're fixers, for
Yeah.
God's sake.
So we
We,
want to fix it. But
yeah,
here, like Caroline is, if you don't know it, it's the name of his cat, but there's Caroline teaching us perhaps like how to be with dying too. Like they doesn't she teach you the lessons of how to be with this time, you
yeah.
know, because they bring them into the moment. Like she's like, just pet me, just be with me.
You create the conditions for them to be present. So all you're doing is removing all the static from around their lives, and you allow them to be present, and you learn so much about how you incorporate dying into living.
Yeah.
And it is, I will to that end never stop being a student when it comes to my life with
Yeah.
animals. And that's why I wanted to put it out there, because I just, without being Jackson the teacher, I just wanted to be somebody who is processing in good ways, bad ways.
Mhm.
I'm not even editing. I'm not being a part of the edit. I'm just letting
Yeah.
it go, which, that's a thing,
Well,
as you
well,
know.
thank you so much. I know we've only chatted a few times, and I just feel such a heart connection to you, and really nice to make a new friend. So
Yes,
I
absolutely.
love and respect you so much,
Thank you so much.
and thank you for joining me today with this.
Yeah, it was an absolute treat. Thank you,
All
Doug.
right, thank you so much, and thanks everybody.